Good evening, and this is Neutral Voices with Black History Moments. At the young age of only 6 years old, she was already fighting racism for simply attending school, something that so many do every day today. Escorted by federal marshals as she walked up the steps of William Frantz Elementary School, November 14th, 1960. She was met with hundreds of protesters and even death threats at 6 years old. Tonight, we honor a woman who made substantial impacts on our country as well as many of our lives. Civil rights icon, Ruby Bridges. Let's talk about Ruby.
Icon, activist.
Man.
Yes.
Yes.
Civil rights activist.
Yeah.
You know what? You talked about that. What I found really interesting about that, and I know you said she was fighting racism, and I see why you would say that, but because of her age, being 6 years old and with such innocence, I would say she wasn't really fighting it at that point.
But
she was standing, and that's what I'm saying. She was, basically getting ready to change the trajectory, the trajectory of the future for the Black people. But it was interesting to me when I was listening to and reading her story that, with her being 6 years old, she had no idea what she was really dealing with. And then I also heard that she thought she was in the midst of a Mardi Gras.
Right.
So being from New Orleans, you know.
But I'm glad you brought up that point, Doc V, because I want to talk about the history we're told and the actual history that would run on. Now, I asked a question to the panel before we came on the air. She was 6.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't believe the movie that this 6-year-old chose this for herself.
Right.
We really can't believe it.
Yeah.
And if you hear her story, if you read it, it was the father was against it. A lot of the community was against it. The only person that stood behind this decision was the mother. I just wonder what was the mother's motivation to push to have this happen. Now, we watched the movie, and it's all good. It's all nice and everything. But she was still segregated within the school. They didn't, I think in the movie they have these at least one white kid come up to her and meet her. It was not that. The school was still segregated within the school. So it was hard for a 6-year-old. So that tells me she didn't know what she was getting into.
Right.
So a lot of things that she did was great, but it was put upon her.
Right. Absolutely. And, I'm glad you bring that up about the mother, because as I was doing my research, they did ask the mother, and she said, I thought she would get a better education at that school. So something else that really isn't talked about a lot with Ruby is Ruby wasn't the only one who was chosen. There was actually 6. So what they did was they made these children take a test in order to be chosen. And it's been said that they made the test so difficult, literally hoping that none of them would pass. Miss Ruby aced it. 5 others, 3 of them, they're called the McDonough 3, went to another school. 2 of the children that passed remained in the school, and Ruby went on to William Frantz.
Yes.
And that's something that we find still today with some testing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so-
exactly.
Yeah.
The simple fact they don't feel that, Black people have the intelligence to reach that level. I'll put it like this. If you put a Black child and a white child in the same room and you teach them the same exact thing, they're both going to excel in the same exact way. So there's no difference between a Black brain and a white brain. But it's put upon
It's in the water.
And put upon us like we have that stigma that we are not smart. We're very, very highly intelligent.
Right.
Exactly.
I absolutely agree. And
another thing that I thought was interesting, her teacher, Miss Henry, the only white teacher that came from Boston to do this.
You got to know the story behind that.
Okay, I was getting ready to say. So I heard an interview with this particular woman, Miss Henry, talking about Ruby. And so one of the things that she was saying was that as she looked out and she observed Ruby, she thought she was talking to the crowd.
Right.
But that she was really praying.
Right.
So later found out that she was really praying, and so that was, I thought, was interesting.
yeah, because to pray for forgiveness for those
them.
people
Yes.
who are, causing all that ruckus. There was
Mhm.
even a point where they had made a box as a coffin, and they put a black baby doll
Mhm.
in the coffin, and they were parading it up in the air. I mean, this was just a brutal
So
picture.
many cruel things, but I'm interested to hear this other side
Well, the teacher,
too.
again, the movie makes it, and
Mhm.
she was.
And I didn't. I'm sure I didn't see. I probably seen it, but I don't remember the movie.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
in
I've
the
read
story, in the
different
movie was.
books.
Now, she did move, and she was from a different culture. She was
Mhm.
from the East Coast, so she didn't know about Jim Crow segregation. That
Mhm.
part is true. But no, she did not volunteer. She was the lowest tenured teacher at that school because she had just
Just
moved
got
there.
hired. Yes.
So she had to
Well,
to
they
keep her
asked her.
job.
They did. They asked her if she
Did
you
they
know,
ask her? Or did
had
they
a
say?
problem. Well, and since we weren't there, everything
Right.
we talking about
Yeah,
was here
yeah,
and
it's
there in the
subject.
book.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that was the way the story was
Right,
told.
right, right.
Right.
By her.
yeah.
Mhm.
that
Yeah, and neither
she
the
was
teacher nor Ruby missed a single day of school, which I thought that was
Right,
amazing.
for that whole year.
And Ruby was even at a later interview when she was older, she quoted and she said, the teacher looked exactly like those people out there, but she wasn't one.
Mhm.
So, even at that age, just the amount of hate is just disgusting to be threatened by a 6-year-old girl.
Well,
Yes.
well, and as we're talking about, all of this, one other thing that we get chronologically distorted in history is they say that Ruby Bridges, they make her and her story. I'm not negating her story. Really, her story is tremendous. What she did and the position that she was put in as a child, it is amazing. I'm not going to take that away from her. But the Little Rock Nine was actually before Ruby Bridges and her story.
Right?
Mhm.
1957.
Right.
1957.
Yeah.
Ruby Bridges was actually born the same year as Brown Voices, the Board of Education. That
Exactly.
was settled. But so it was like a 5 or 6 year time span before they
Mhm.
really started integrating the Southern schools. The Little Rock Nine, these were 9 teenagers. And I believe, and that's why I say, I believe these teenagers had a better choice and a better understanding of the impact that they may have on
Mhm.
history versus this 16-year-old.
Right.
But
Six.
6-year-old, I apologize, this 6-year-old, going into the school, and they were treated a lot worse than Ruby Bridges. And the story is not, but again, it's not to debate history. I just want the full stories to be told.
Right. The board of directors actually, speaking of the Little Rock Nine, actually told them, do not come here on the first day of school. So they really didn't even attend until the second day because the board of directors asked them not to come the very first day of school.
Yeah, and they really didn't get into school until 2 weeks
weeks
after.
later.
Mhm.
Yeah, because it took the National Guard to be removed for them to be able to get into the school. But we're going to talk about Ruby Bridges, and this is amazing. And the point I want to make is, everybody wants to tell us to get over.
Mhm.
This happened so long ago.
Right.
Get over it. Ruby Bridges is still alive today.
Oh yeah, amazing.
But you gotta think about it, it's still happening to this day. Think about it.
Yeah.
It's still happening to this day.
Well, everything that she went through is still happening today, and I
Yeah.
believe that's why right now she travels, and this is what she does. She talks to young
Mhm.
people. And one of the things I heard her say, which is very important for people to understand, is that you have to make a change, but it's only going to happen when people begin to teach the children,
Mhm.
Mhm.
yes,
Yes.
to not be racist.
Right.
And so I think we've mentioned that before. So parents have to begin to teach their children so that we don't repeat the cycle. And so we have to be aware because history is known to repeat itself.
Yeah.
And
What's
so-
it said? If you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And
so-
and that's where it's actually looking like it's heading that way. 'Cause
Oh,
we-
you telling me? I'm in the school
Yeah,
system,
that's
buddy.
what I'm saying. It's looking at going back that way because
Let's
they
hope
won't let
not.
us, they won't let us know our history. Well, I can't say that. We don't take the time to research our own history because can't nobody give you your history. You got to go look for it and find it and understand it.
Yes, or somebody can give it to you, but they may not give it to you correctly,
Right.
or give you all sides, of
Right,
it. So
right.
the full truth of it.
And
So
that
you're
brings
right.
us to, the challenges, the trials, the tribulations that are faced.
Well, it's not much different now, but we're in the classrooms. Ruby Bridges, and if you know the story, she was segregated within the school system in the schools.
Mhm.
She couldn't go to lunch, she couldn't go to recess. So she was isolated. And that's why I fathom for a 6-year-old, this was way too much for her to bear on her own, even to
Well,
think.
at one point, wasn't it that she was in the school with not many students, and the few students that were there, the principal hid from her.
Right,
They were
right.
So-
They segregated them,
Yeah,
yes.
so a lot of times she spent her day trying to figure out where the other kids at.
She could
Right.
hear
So
them,
she
but
was
she
so
couldn't see
innocent.
them.
And so at some point it was that way. But when on her first day, when those parents removed those 500 kids, imagine what she probably felt like being in that school alone. But that's why I said kudos to Miss Henry for being her art teacher, her
Right.
math teacher,
Right.
English teacher, whatever.
Right, no,
she
I
needed
commend
to
the
be.
teacher
Right.
for
And
sticking it
then
out.
it's
Yes.
amazing that today they are best friends.
Right,
Yes,
exactly.
yes,
I
yes.
thought that was awesome.
Yes.
But
It-
not only, I'm sorry, Jill, but you asked about the struggles. Not only did they have struggles in education, do you know her family suffered a lot? Her grandparents was kicked off the land which they were sharecropping. Her father lost their job. They were ostracized within the town and the community. They couldn't go into shops and restaurants. So it had a overall effect, not just with the school system, but with the school system. It did bring to break up the segregation and start to integrate in the schools.
Yeah.
But look at our schools today. If you on this side of town in this tax bracket, your education is taught totally different than
Yes.
you are on
Yeah.
you on this side of town in this
Mhm.
tax bracket. 7th graders across the board should be taught what 7th graders need to know. It shouldn't be defined on where you are, who you are, but you look at our school system today; it's
That's how
divided
it
up
is.
like
Right.
That's how it is.
Right. And
That's right.
as a parent, I have to think that back then you take somebody like Ruby and you put her in an all-white school with classmates that aren't welcoming, with teachers, administration, with everyone who's not welcoming, with absolutely zero transition, and tell me how that is going to immediately benefit a child and not be an absolute toxic environment.
Absolutely.
Well, okay. I'm glad you mentioned that. Let's put that in today. You put these kids in these classrooms, and teachers are not teaching like they used to.
Well, how can we?
And
They
you
have to
understand?
untie our hands.
Yeah. So that is an adage right there. But then instead of looking at the intelligence, the intellect, and the
Mhm.
mind process of each child individually,
Yeah.
if you're not in this frame, then I label you.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
And where segregation is not only, with color, it's in labels. I'll put you here.
Now you're going down a whole nother path, because I'm saying when we start looking at the labels, a lot of that has to do with what parents allow.
Right.
And some of the children are labeled, let's just say in the 3rd grade, they carry it through the 9th grade. Parents never go back and change it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there
know,
go. Then
that
they're an adult.
Yeah.
parents have to, own up to that and do what they can do, stay on top of it and change and remove those labels.
But yeah, and that's where it all started with Ruby Bridges. And, it started with the color, but we still got a lot of work to do. The
Got a lot of
color
work to
and
do.
the segregation and saying that, one was greater or one deserved the education and
Sure.
the other didn't. We are past that. And it's great that she made those changes,
Right.
that she was put in a position to make these changes.
Okay, but then so you say it made those, and that's why she's still working today, because we could say things have not changed.
Right.
Okay, they changed a little bit, but they're not where they need to be.
Right.
Amen.
And so she was saying we have to get to the point where we actually honor what Dr. King said when he said that you should not judge people by their skin,
Right.
their color. You have to judge them by their character. So we need to get to that point.
Sure.
And that's one of the things that she's traveling. She's saying that. And so when we get to that point, there's a House bill. I'm not sure of the number, but there's a House bill right now in the education system that they're trying to pass to keep teachers from being able to insert certain history and certain things.
Yes.
And so, we don't know how that's going to go, but we're going to have to keep an eye on that and see where that
Yeah.
goes.
Look, I want you to hold that because I want to talk in the House bill a little bit when we
Okay.
get a little bit further. But
Okay.
I'm going to find out between now and then. But yeah, I got something on that.
Okay.
Before we move on to our next point, I just want to read a couple stats. So, Black children are 5 times as likely than white children to attend schools that are highly segregated by race. And also, when Black children have the opportunity to attend the same schools as white children, Black children perform substantially better on tests, which measures education performance. So, I mean, it's not just opinion. It's not just what we think. It's actual facts.
And then why is it that? Because a lot of times we got to work harder
Right.
and we
Yep.
know it,
Absolutely.
so.
But we can talk about the local education system with
Mhm.
everything, but let's look at a national scale. Let's talk about the colleges and the universities. Think about it. Not only could they not get into public elementary, middle, and high school, well, I don't know if they had junior high at then or whatever, but they couldn't get into those schools. They
Mhm.
couldn't get into public universities like the
Right.
University of Alabama, the
Yeah.
University of Mississippi,
Mhm.
all those schools.
Mhm.
So that's why in
1931.
no,
18.
1837.
I was going to say, you getting ready to talk about the H.
HBCU,
You,
Okay, I was
baby.
going to say, yeah, you
HBCU.
got
Hey.
to go back some.
Alabama
Oh.
A&M, got it. Hey, product of a HBCU,
All right.
product of a HBCU.
Yeah,
Proud.
way back.
But Cheney University in Pennsylvania was
Mhm.
the very
First
first
one.
HBCU, and that was founded in Black History Month. It wasn't Black History Month then, but
Mhm.
it was in February 1837, February 25th to be exact, 1837. So they have an anniversary coming, and still today, and it's amazing that our people don't know how many HBCUs there are.
Now, is that one still open
Yes,
Yes. Cheney's
under
still
the
on.
same name?
yes.
Yes. Actually, it was under another name.
I was wondering because I thought Wilberforce was the oldest
No.
in Ohio.
No.
In Ohio.
Because-
In Ohio.
No, I'm
I
saying the
think it's
oldest.
about the third. It might be the second or third.
Okay,
But,
yeah,
yeah.
it had to be the second.
Yeah,
then.
Cheney
Okay.
is the oldest.
Yeah.
But there are a total of 107 HBCUs, colleges, universities, junior colleges, and community colleges throughout this country.
Yeah.
And why was that? Because again, we were not afforded those opportunities to be able to go get those right. And most of the HBCUs were built by freemen.
Mhm.
And everybody know what
Mhm.
freemen is. That was after the Revolutionary War, Civil War.
Civil War.
The Civil War. After the Civil War, and they were freed, so they made their own paths.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, most of it was made to have teachers and tradesmen.
Right.
So at the end of the day, they figure out if we could do teachers and tradesmen, why can't we have lawyers, doctors, engineers?
Right.
And they just further and further the education, to broaden the education for them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because I said, I researched all this. Our black universities are some of the most highly intelligent students in the
Mhm.
United States.
Hey, my cousin Wilberforce. What's up,
Wilberforce?
Chandra?
I mean,
Sean
coming
Trent.
out of HBCU, some people think it's a bad thing. Actually, it's one of
I
the. It's
don't know.
a lot of people.
The vice
Mm.
president went to HBCU.
Wow.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, a lot of people think that's a bad thing because
That's
it's
interesting.
surrounded by nothing but blacks.
Wow.
But
I didn't realize that people thought that.
yeah,
Yeah.
people thinks that.
Mm.
But like I told my daughter, go to a HBCU. You're
Okay.
around your own.
Well,
You're
you
around
can
your.
rap.
You're around the central part of black intelligence at
Mhm.
its finest.
Yeah.
No matter where you at, you surrounded by your own, and you see your own thriving. So that should give you an understanding
Yeah.
how to move forward.
Right.
Mhm.
And what other way was there? I mean, at that time, a basic right, education is a basic right.
Well,
That's something that you shouldn't have to fight for. So they created their own. And I found also
That's what we
that
do.
professors were actually, very open to this because they wanted to teach. They couldn't teach at these white schools.
Nope.
So it also gave them an opportunity to teach, to be in the education system.
Well, a lot of the southern schools, instead of letting them integrate the white universities, they was like, no, give them their own spot, giving their own stuff so they can have it. And it's crazy because now, if you look at the sporting arena and all that, that's where they was going to get their sports. Our football players, basketball
talent.
players,
Sure.
the talent,
Okay.
because the simple fact they couldn't hack it. They had to come and steal ours because they seem faster, smarter people. So now it's just more like, hey, let's get them.
Right. And, we've talked about a lot, and we really have to look at our history is our today. So let's look at the then and now of how things were and how things are. And before you get into the bill, I just have to say, as a white woman of a white child, there is absolutely no reason that I would not want my daughter to learn the things about Ruby Bridges that I have learned in the past 24 hours. Not only does it allow her to step into the shoes and have the empathy, But if you do not want your child learning about this history, that really says a lot about you. And we're going to get into that. But just as a parent, I mean, I was heartbroken the more that I dug. And I would want nothing more than my child to learn about this.
Yeah.
Very important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The then and now, they're not segregating us or keeping us out by, laws or by separation. Now they're expelling black kids at an astronomical rate more than they do white kids. Black kids in most school systems are suspended, expelled at a 60 to 40% rate versus any other race. So they eliminate us from these systems. And a lot, Fort Wayne Community Schools, I don't know if they still have this practice, but I remember a time when we were in school, they would eliminate you from the school system for a year where you couldn't go to a Fort Wayne Community School for a year.
The whole system.
The system. I don't know if that's still a practice. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I just remember this.
Well, because I'm not sure. I can't speak to
No,
that because
I'm not-
I'm just saying it from my perspective. No,
Yeah.
it's like you can't get a kid out. I don't care what they do.
Well, and that's good that it's changed.
So,
But, look at Baltimore. Baltimore, Maryland is one of the blackest cities in the United States, but they have the poorest education among the black people and among their whole county. Baltimore County is a rich county because that's where most politicians live. Baltimore, Maryland, the city, man, they did a test about 3 years ago. It might have been a little longer, but they say not even 10% of the students pass basic math and English.
Wow.
Yeah, that's bad.
So it's the systematic things that are segregating us now. They're not funding these schools, or they say the school is poor performing, so they take the funding from them, and it's just crazy ways that it hadn't much changed.
But you know what? Just like the civil rights, a lot of people kind of got confused and thought it was a black versus white type thing. That's what most people they key in on that. And not the fact that there were a lot of white people standing with black people back then. And I think that that's where the change is going to happen with the education system, because there are white students in the same classroom with black students.
Yeah.
And until the white parents stand up, white leaders in the community stand up and fight for equal education for all students, the change is not going to happen.
Right.
And so that's where we are, back to facing that, almost that civil
Right.
rights
Because, I mean,
type movement.
if 6-year-old Ruby faced it and
Yeah.
children today are still facing it, your white kid can learn about it.
Well, I disagree because this House bill, and I'm glad y'all segue into that. This House bill, Indiana House Bill 1134.
Is that it? I need to know that number.
1134. Now, I'm not going to
34.
go in all of it, but
Yes.
there's a segment that I want to quote out of it, and this is verbatim out of that.
Okay.
They're trying to prevent the dissemination of harmful material that would adversely affect the children.
Mhm.
That's saying, so that means they're not going to teach civil uprising, they're not going to teach civil rights, they're not going to teach anything that might adversely affect a child.
So why do you
Right.
disagree? You don't think that white children should learn about Black
No,
history?
I think everybody should learn about it. I disagree
It's
with
not
this
black
bill.
history. It's not black
It's
history.
American. There you go.
It's not black
American
No,
history.
but
Let's-
that's what it's called.
No,
That's
no,
what
no,
it's
no.
called in
It's
curriculum.
it's
here in the
American
curriculum.
history.
It's
It's
American
American
history.
history.
Yes,
That's
because
what
it was a part of
It's
America.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
what we call it, but look up a school's curriculum.
at the end of the day,
Right, but
that's what needs to change right there.
That- and you
Stop
right,
saying
E.
black history.
Come on.
It's American history.
And
You can't separate it.
But
can't
that,
separate the two.
and I agree with you 100%. And that's how come we have to change the whole conversation when it comes to Black History Month.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
And we keep
history.
talking about
It's
that.
every day.
It's
Yes,
every day.
it's every day. We
Yeah.
live in it
We
every
making
day.
it every
We're-
day.
That's
We,
how
we,
just
we need
right
to
there,
take
we're
the
gonna
pen out
make
their
it.
hand. That's what we need to do.
But-
we need to write the story.
Yes, I agree. But I just want to make this point real quick.
Okay.
And I might make some people mad. But Indiana is the same state that believes that we can't teach children, things that adversely affect them, like history things that, were terrible in history. But we in the same state can say that a 3-year-old can choose if it wants to be a boy or a girl. So you're going to tell me you're going to give a 3-year-old more common sense to choose their gender than a 6th grader, 7th grader, 8th grader that's been in school to know what they want to learn? Does that make sense?
Make
Yes.
it make sense.
And
People.
I need to look at that House bill a little deeper because I'm not sure at what age. And you said what?
No,
You said
it's-
a certain
it's-
grade.
No, it's actually across the board.
And that's what I was wondering. Can we teach it in high school?
No, it's across
Okay.
the
Mhm.
board.
See, and that's why I need to look at those details. I just read a little bit. It's
Yeah.
pretty long.
It's pretty long. It's
Yeah.
interesting. I say everybody research it. Don't take my word
You
for it.
have to.
You
need
got to
to.
go research it.
Yeah.
Well, and a lot of that is being done already, even prior to the bill.
Yeah.
My daughter attends a predominantly white school, and they're already removing books, something that she wanted to read. So I know that it's happening right now in a lot of schools that are predominantly white. But before we close out, I just want to thank you for being with us tonight. Please join us tomorrow at 8:30.
We're gonna do this again. Who we talking about tomorrow?
Who are we talking
That's a
about
good
tomorrow?
question.
This is
Mr.
going to be
X.
interesting.
We're
I'm
talking about
excited.
Malcolm
Malcolm.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yay, Malcolm. And we have some other people on there we're going to be
Yes,
talking about
yes.
too. But don't y'all think it's interesting? And if I'm wrong with this, I just want to ask this question: was she the only Ruby Bridges? Was she the only one to have a normal or Norman Rockwell painting?
I believe so.
done?
I believe so.
Wonder what made him want to paint that. It's kind of interesting.
This is
isn't
kind of
it?
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so as we exit, let me leave you guys with this. Zach Hubert came out of slavery with an adage that he would pass on to his children and their children and down the line. And I'm sure we have all heard this.
hmm
Get your education. He would always say to them when his family gathered together in the later years, he would remind them and say, it's the one thing that they can't take. And I know I've said that many times.
I've heard that many
Your
times.
education is the one thing they can't take away. Gotta get it. This is Neutral Voices. See you next time.